This is The Allusionist, in which I, Helen Zaltzman, shake up language until it coagulates into a smooth emulsion. Here we are, still cavorting in the wordplay series. It's been really lovely to hear from so many of you who enjoyed listening to all the crossword constructors last episode. This episode is about what happens when crossword constructors really go big on making a cryptic puzzle that can take months, even years to solve. On with the show.
Hello, I'm John Finnemore. I'm a writer, a comedian and an actor. I write mostly comedy, mostly for radio, but also TV and film. And I have just written a thing that's extremely hard to categorise. It's not really a book, it's a puzzle. It's also a murder mystery, and it comes in the form of a box of 100 picture postcards with text on one side and pictures on the other. I mean, now you describe it like that, it is quite hard to categorise. Mm-hmm. Yes. People are always saying, what's the new thing you're working on? Okay, sit down. In 1934. Yeah. All right, yeah. Well, let's start in 1934. In 1934... Yes, in 1934, a man called Edward Powys Mathers, who was better known at the time by his pseudonym of Torquemada, as in the Spanish Inquisitor. He was the crossword editor of the Observer, and he more or less invented the British-style cryptic crossword, where you have a definition part to the clue and then a word play part to the clue. There's a clue in the clue as to how to approach the clue. We Brits love not saying what we mean directly. Born in 1892 in England, Edward Powys Mathers didn't invent cryptic crossword clues, but he was a pioneer in using only cryptic clues in his crosswords, and making the clues double thinkier. He published more than 600 of his challenging word puzzles and reviewed detective fiction on the side. Then, in 1934, he published a gigantic puzzle combining both interests in the Torquemada Puzzle Book, a miscellany of original crosswords, acrostics, anagrams, verbal pastimes and problems, etc., etc., and Cain's Jawbone, a Torquemada mystery novel. Long title, but that is just to warm you up for the endeavours contained within. The first half was his crosswords and other word games, and the second half was, well, it was a 100-page novella, but the pages were printed in a random order. And the aim of the puzzle, what the puzzler had to do, was first work out what the correct order of the pages was, and then even when you do that, it remains a very cryptic, elusive text, and they then had to work out the details of 6 murders told in that story, who'd killed who. Unusual for a book to come with pages that you're meant to take out and rearrange. It was a very unusual book. I've got a copy of the original here that I can show you. So starts with the crosswords. Ooh. Then you have the crossword answers. Then you have, and the various other word games. And then, this is the page that explains the rules. Then you have the 100 pages that you're supposed to cut out and rearrange with a section for notes. And then, what I particularly enjoy about it is at the end, he included some transparent paper, which you were meant to cut out and use so that more than one person could do the crosswords. That's so considerate. I know. He's thinking about future generations. Is that an original copy? Yes, it is. Yes. It's in lovely condition, and no one has taken the pages out of that one and rearranged it. No, people have had a go at a few of the crosswords, but no one seems to have attempted the puzzle. This 100-page cryptic puzzle / murder mystery novella, Cain's Jawbone, came with a cash prize back in 1934 for the first person who sent the publishers the correct solution by post, which in 1935 3 people did, and 2, Mr. Saxon Arnold, Sidney Turner and Mr. William Kennedy, received prize money of £25 each because their letters containing the solution arrived on the same day, and it seemed unfair to award the prize to the person who happened to have their letter opened first. But the solution remained a secret. It was never published. Then Edward Powys Mathers died a few years later in 1939, and Cain's Jawbone was largely forgotten about. Until 2019. A copy of the Torquemada puzzle book had made its way to Shandy Hall, the museum in the North Yorkshire house that had been occupied in the 1760s by Lawrence Sterne, the author of the quixotic novel Tristram Shandy.
Shandy Hall's curator Patrick Wildgust decided to try to solve Cain's Jawbone, and even managed to track down the original solution in a letter Edward Powys Mathers had sent in response to someone who had submitted their not quite correct answer to the puzzle. In collaboration with the publisher Unbound, Cain's Jawbone was republished in September 2019 in the form of a box of 100 postcards, which is how John Finnemore got a hold of it.
I got the box of postcards because I'm a crossword solver and setter, and this seemed right up my street. And I had a look through them and quickly decided that I didn't really have the first idea and that this was beyond me, and I certainly didn't have the time to give it the proper consideration that it would need.
Even though Unbound was offering a prize of £1,000 to the first person to send in the correct solution. But getting there takes a lot of application.
Shall I read you a short piece to give
lovely.
people an idea of what we're talking about? Here we go. Okay. It flashed through my mind that the place between Eros and the Queen's Hall had been horribly changed since Orpen painted it in 1912. Also that even if I took the warnings of the Ming and got there instantaneously, my modest Munich would have to bracket at my expense with islands more commonly known as Efate. So it's that sort of nonsense, and then you have to work out all of those references and then work out how they fit together to form a narrative, and then work out who murdered who. In that example, we've got Google, so it's fairly easy to look up that the place between Eros and Queen's Hall that Orpen painted in 1912 is a restaurant called the Café Royal in London. But what you can't look up is the warnings of the Ming, because that doesn't mean anything. You have to work out that this narrator uses spoonerisms a lot of the time, and what they mean is the wings of the morning.
Oh, no.
I know. And the wings of the morning is a biblical phrase from one of the Psalms that means instantly. So she's saying, even if I got there instantly, my modest Munich would have to bracket at my expense with islands more commonly known as Efate. That means her modest Munich is a slang for a lager.
Oh.
And they would have to bracket these islands commonly known because those are the Sandwich Islands. So what she's saying is even if she got to the Café Royal now, she would still have to buy sandwiches to go with her beer. And in order to understand that, you need to know that in the 30s, the licensing laws in London meant that different areas of London had different rules about when you could buy drink and when you couldn't. And in this case, the Café Royal was in a part of London that meant that at 10 o'clock you could only buy beer if you also bought something to eat. So that tells you that this page must be written at going on 10 o'clock.
Wow.
Which helps you fit it in with the other pages that are written that day. And the thing with the spoonerism tells you who is probably speaking. So that's what's going on. But there's 100 pages of that, and that was only a quarter of a page.
Okay, so 400 of that, and you're really getting somewhere.
Yeah, and a lot of it is quotations, and he doesn't always tell you he's quoting. That's part of the puzzle, is you've got to recognise, oh, that's Browning, so it must be the character who likes Browning, which... Now, again, Google, you can put in something that looks suspiciously poetic and go, oh, right, Walt Whitman. But then you would just have had to have known, I suppose. You'd just have had to be so well-read that you could spot a Whitman or a Browning just cold reading it. So I'm in awe of the three people who did it without Google. But then again, what they had, they at least were living in the 30s. So the topical references to licensing laws or tennis players or things like that, they had a small advantage there. But I'd still rather be solving it post-internet than in 1934.
When he first got his copy of Cain's Jawbone in late 2019, John didn't spend very long trying to solve the puzzle.
I had a look. Read something like that, thought, oh, I don't know, maybe if I had all the time in the world, but I don't have all the time in the world. Then there was a pandemic and I had all the time in the world. So, it was my little lockdown project. I spread it out on a bed and would potter up in the evening and just sort of tinker with a few pages.
Wow. So while the rest of us were growing spring onions from stubs, you you were solving a 100-page cryptic puzzle.
It was a really enjoyable thing to do.
What was fun about it?
It's that slow release of not understanding something for ages and then eventually having to come at it from a different direction, or putting other pages together that then throw a light on the thing that you've been chewing over forever. And so it's got that delayed gratification and, constant little serotonin hits all the way through. I think the full story, when I say I looked at it and thought that's too hard for me, is I looked at it and I thought, well, it's clearly very hard and I don't trust whether this is doable after all this time, and I don't know whether to trust the puzzle maker, because the cryptic crosswords are, because he kind of more or less invented them, they're a lot looser and weirder than, and I thought, if he's playing as fast and loose with this as he does with his crosswords, then I probably won't be able to solve it after all this time. But in fact, I was wrong. It's a really well-constructed puzzle, and as with most well-constructed puzzles, there's a moment when, there are a few sort of steps of revelation, but there's one in particular, there's a realization you make that makes you say, I see, I don't know the answer, but I can see how I'm supposed to do this now. Now I know what to do next. And then when you've done that bit, again, there's a realization of, oh, I see. So, for instance, in that page I just gave you, I said about the times of the day. So every page in that section has a reference to the hour of the day, however cryptic. Okay, so I know those pages are in the right order because I've decrypted all the references to the hours, and that's how they fit. And it's also hard to spend an hour on it without making some progress, so you don't get too frustrated by it, because even if you've only swapped the order of 2 pages or worked out someone's surname, you feel that your time's been well spent.
And after 6 months, and with there being tens of millions of possible combinations of these 100 pages, John thought he had found the one correct solution. How did you feel when you got to the solution? Were you sure that that was the one?
I was mostly sure. By the end, I was pretty sure that I got it, except for, I think, 3 pages. There's 1 page I just wasn't sure of, and 2 pages that I felt could go in either order within their section. I've since realised what I was missing about the 2 that I wasn't sure about, by the way. He says in his introduction to it that the reader should be reassured that there is only one possible order, and he's right. It doesn't make sense in it because of his careful construction. I was confident that I'd worked out the story, and pretty confident of the page order, but there was room for doubt. But, eventually I worked it out. And it turned out I was the only one who did it, who got the complete correct solution.
Big cash prize.
Yeah.
What did you spend it on?
A piano.
Lovely.
I bought myself a piano. Because I thought, I want to spend that all on one thing, so I can look at that piano and go, oh yeah, that's from that strange year of the pandemic and Cain's Jawbone.
The thing about pianos as well is just they lay it all out. They're like, look, here's some octaves. Do what you want, rather than you've got to figure out how to use me.
That's true, yes. It's sort of the opposite of Cain's Jawbone. So I did that, and then I sort of forgot about it.
But the Cain's Jawbone revival was about to really take off. In 2021, Unbound published more copies in paperback book form. And in San Francisco, one of them was bought by Sarah Scannell, who covered her bedroom walls with the pages and posted on TikTok about her progress with the puzzle. And like countless dances and poaching chicken in NyQuil, TikTok spawned a trend.
And so the book really took off and sold very well in America. And then, because that had done so well, foreign publishers were interested in it. But the trouble was, the original publisher, they knew the right order, but they didn't know why. The publishers hadn't solved the puzzle themselves. So when the translator was asking how to translate that stuff about, Munich or sandwiches or whatever, they couldn't tell them. The only person they knew who could was me. So I had a weird job of being a sort of consultant to translators, where they would Zoom or email me long lists of questions about what on earth was going on, and I'd do my best to pass it for them.
This seems like a really difficult translation job, because cryptic clues, you can't necessarily translate them directly because the crypticism might not carry.
Surprisingly, because given his job and what he was famous for, there aren't that many cryptic crossword style pieces of wordplay in it, but there's all sorts of other wordplay and also slang references and, Englishisms, but 1930s Englishisms or Americanisms. I can't imagine how the poor translators did it, but they did.
Once you've solved it, does it work as a novella? And out of order, how does it work as a novella?
If you just read it through in the printed random order, then it just seems like it's impossible that this could mean anything. But it makes no sense at all. It's so strange and elusive and goes off at so many tangents, and there are nonetheless distinguishable characters and, as I say, a couple of nice jokes. As a novella, in the right order, just if the story was retold in plain language, I don't think you'd quite say that it works, but it does work under its own terms. This ridiculous complicated thing he succeeds in making. Meanwhile, I was sort of wishing I had another one, to do, because he never wrote a puzzle in that format again. He kind of invented the cryptic crossword and the Cain's Jawbone mismatched novel puzzle, and he wrote hundreds of the first and one of the second. So no one's ever done it since. There's no others to have a go at. Anyway, I've written one. I've tried to write my own.
Well, you did it. You didn't just try. You tried and you did.
I tried, and then I failed, and then I kept on trying, and then eventually I did it. Yes, it's called The Researcher's First Murder.
So there's sequels planned?
No. No. It was incredibly hard to do. I find writing very difficult, but I do crossword setting for fun as relaxation. It seems to come from a different part of my mind. So I thought, oh, maybe it comes from that part. And it turns out it does. It was much more enjoyable to write than most of what I write. It was just really, really difficult. The moment I knew I wanted to do it was when I had the idea of this time making them postcards. If Cain's Jawbone, if there's anything wrong with it, it's that apparent unscalability when you look at it. It seems utterly impenetrable and you don't know where to start. And I've met a lot of people who bought the book and then just haven't really got anywhere with it, and that seems a bit of a shame. So I thought with the postcards, I can have exactly the same format on the text side, 100 pages, out of order, put them together, tell a story, tell me who murdered. I've done 10 murders this time, so who murders who 10 times over.
I've done 10 murders.
I've done
John
10 murders.
Finnemore. Very incriminating. Just going to take that out of context and play the police.
But on the other side, I've got these pictures. They fall very obviously into 10 sets of 10, and they are standalone puzzles that have their own answer, and the answers feed into the main narrative, but you can just do them entirely separately. My ideal is that everyone will get somewhere and very few people will solve absolutely everything, i.e. the whole text side correctly and all 10 of the puzzles. The thing about the picture puzzles is the first puzzle is always, you have to kind of work out how on earth this is a puzzle. This appears to be 10 pictures of various statues and artworks, or stained glass windows with animals holding shields with letters on. What am I supposed to do with this? What am I supposed to do now? I find that kind of thing fun, so I hope others will too. And I've tried to make them as different types of puzzle as I can, so that whatever the kind of puzzle you like or the kind of strength you have, there'll be one that's up your street, at least one. What I want to do is replicate that feeling I had when I got the breakthrough I was talking about of going, oh, I'm in safe hands. This person knows what they're doing. I can spend more time on this and I won't be disappointed, even if I can't solve it.
Did you feel like you had to internet proof it to some extent? Because I know people were like trying to use algorithms to solve the old one, and it actually didn't work.
No, I don't think you could use an algorithm to solve mine. Yes, the internet existing changes it entirely. Now, my puzzle has all sorts of strange, obscure stuff in it, and I couldn't have written it without the internet, and I don't imagine that it's solvable without it either. So anyone who does have a go at it is encouraged to search for stuff early and often, because that's part of the way to solve it. But everything, however obscure, it's always available from at least 2 sources in a way that I think will always be available. And you don't need to know it beforehand. You just need to be clever about working out where to find it. And then there are other things. I don't use spoonerisms, for instance, but that Wings of the Morning, Warnings of the Ming is a good example of something that isn't Googleable. I mean, it might be now because I think a few people have put solutions up. But when I was doing it, there was no way to work out what that meant except the way he intended. There are a few tricks I've played like that. So it's not internet proof. Indeed, as I say, it kind of encourages the solver to use the internet, but I don't think you can do it just with the internet. I think you do also have to have a human intelligence there as well.
As someone who sets and solves puzzles, what to you makes a particularly satisfying puzzle?
Well, it's the same as what makes a satisfying murder mystery, I think. The ideal is that when you finally get it, are told it by the detective or look up the solution, the reaction should be, oh, yes, I should have got that, as it were. That makes perfect sense. That's inevitable and right and well constructed. And I was nearly there, but Poirot got there first. Even a good crossword clue is when you finally manage to forget about the surface, by which I mean what the cryptic clue appears to mean. And it can be so hard to divorce yourself from that. And then when you realise the answer, you should go, oh, yes, of course.
It seems challenging to find the balance between it being hard enough to solve that it's intriguing, but not so hard that people give up straight away. Because it sounds like a lot of people were turned off Cain's Jawbone because it was so daunting.
Yes, exactly. And it's very hard to measure how hard a puzzle is. My puzzles are usually harder than I think, it turns out. Both this and crossword puzzles I set, I think once you work it out, can only go in one order. I hope there's more than, in fact, I'm fairly sure there's more than one way to go about it, but I need to make sure that there is at least one and I know how I expect it to be solved. So that was a lot of the work, and a lot of the fun was creating that path towards ordering them that I expect people to follow, and then I'm hoping that when people actually start to do it, they'll do it in ways that completely surprise me, and I won't know until it's published.
Yeah, what would make you happier if nobody solves it or if lots of people solve it?
Oh, lots of people, without question. I hope it's not trivial, but any puzzle has failed if nobody solves it. Somebody said about crosswords that you have a battle, but the setter's aim should be to lose the battle. The setter wants an infuriated, frustrated, but ultimately successful solver, and that's what I want with this as well, partly because I'm really proud of it, and I want people to see the whole thing. That was an odd feeling, actually. There were times when I was thinking, I'm putting all of this effort into this. How many people are ever going to actually understand what this page means that I've spent all this time on? I don't know. We'll see. We might get thousands of right entries, or I'd be surprised if we didn't get any. That would be awful, but I don't think that will happen. And
there's £1,000 prize for solving.
There is, yes. Yeah.
If you solve the researcher's first murder and stop the researcher doing another one.
That's right.
Do you have the solution somewhere heavily guarded?
Yes, only I have it at the moment. I have it in the program that I wrote it in. Even the publisher doesn't have it yet because they don't need it.
Oh, I hope you got a backup.
That's a good point. I'm not sure I have. I suppose I have it on more than one device. Yes.
Okay, good. Just in case, if a device bricks.
Yeah. We were talking about how hard it was to translate Cain's Jawbone. This, for various reasons, would be, I think, impossible to translate in its current form. So what I'm doing now is working on a version of it that's not exactly the same story, that is translatable. And so that will be published in some countries, I think, the year later.
Same solution, different journey?
Different solution, but same idea. So it's not like it's a new book, but I have changed the solutions. Otherwise, either one would be a crib to the other if you happen to speak two languages.
Right. So polyglots have got multiple puzzles to solve. Lucky them.
Well, yeah, we'll see. That one will be just come out as a normal paperback. That won't be the box of postcards, because one of the things that would be very hard to translate, if not impossible, is some of the picture puzzles.
Do you have a warning to people? Not exactly a warning, but a request, like when you see the mousetrap and they ask you not to tell people the denouement. Do you have anything like that to stop people just blabbing?
No, I suppose I hope that people don't. Actually, people were very good about Cain's Jawbone. I think it was a long time before. I mean, people have now. The solution is up on the net now. But it took a long time for that to happen. And I don't think any of the first round people did give it away because the publishers asked us nicely not to. So hopefully that's all it will take this time as well. But it won't last forever. It'll be on the internet eventually.
People should enjoy the journey, not just the destination, right?
I mean, I've been giving some giveaways, obviously, in this chat, but that's because the solution's been breached for so long, and also because I've just picked a couple of things from Cain to spoil. There's still so much left unspoiled.
Yeah, I think it might save people maybe 10 minutes rather than rush them to the solution immediately.
That little bit that I passed for you is not going to give away the whole thing. And it won't really help anyone who hasn't made quite a lot of headway.
As the first 21st century solver of Cain's Jawbone, I believe you were entitled to be in a Cain's Jawbone club and to go to the Cain's Jawbone conference. Did you participate in either of those things?
I did. Yes, no, I did. I didn't know about the club until I got there. But yes, anyone who submitted a correct solution by last summer was invited to Shandy Hall, and we had a lovely day in the sunshine, and it was lovely meeting people where you could say just, what the hell was the story that the Colonel told in Trafalgar Square? What's that got to do with anything? Has anyone worked that? Because there's still bits of Cain that I don't understand. Not all that many now, but there are little quarter pages which don't stop you putting them in the right order or knowing who did what that I still haven't cracked.
Satisfying to think that in 90 years' time, people could be gathering at the Researcher's First Murder conference. What was John Finnemore thinking?
Well, what I'm really looking forward to is lurking on the boards because people set up a lot of boards trying to collaboratively solve Cain's Jawbone, and I will absolutely be there with a pseudonym, not saying anything, or certainly not helping, but I think I will enjoy watching that process a lot.
If they're getting there too quickly, will you throw in
see if I can derail them?
Herrings there? Yeah.
If I can think of a way, maybe I will.
John Finnemore is a comedian, actor, writer and crossword constructor, and the author of the upcoming puzzle murder mystery book Box of 100 Cards thing. He's right, it is difficult to describe, but it's called The Researcher's First Murder, a new Cain's Jawbone puzzle, and you can pre-order it now at unbound.com. Also, the annual new episode of his BBC Radio 4 comedy show, John Finnemore's Souvenir Programme, has just landed. You can listen to it on BBC Sounds. Your randomly selected word from the dictionary today is famulous, noun, historical, an assistant or servant, especially one working for a magician or scholar. Try using famulous in an email today. This episode was produced by me, Helen Zaltzman, on the unceded ancestral and traditional territory of the Musqueam, Squamish and Tsleil-Waututh nations. The music is by Martin Alstwick of palebirdmusic.com. and the podcasts Neutrino Watch and Song by Song. I am on my way to the script spelling bee, so if it all works out and I don't accidentally drop all my recordings into a pool of wet cement, next episode will be all about the bee. And you can hear or read every episode. Get links to all the guests you heard from and their work, read more information about the topics we've talked about, see the full dictionary entries for the randomly selected words, find links to any events I've got coming up at the show's forever home, theallusionist.org.